Imagine taking a peaceful weekend getaway at your family's lake cabin, only to have a self-proclaimed HOA president storm in, accuse you of crimes, and start taking pictures inside your home. But here's the twist. She had no idea the person you were meeting inside was the state attorney general, and that her little power trip was about to turn into a criminal investigation. After months of grinding through work, drowning in emails and barely seeing the sun, I finally hit my limit. My mind was restless, my body exhausted, and I knew I needed to escape somewhere quiet. Somewhere without the constant buzz of city life. That's when I remembered my late uncle's old lake cabin. It sat deep in the woods, an hour from the nearest town, tucked beside a crystal blue lake that looked like a mirror on still days. I hadn't been there since I was a kid, but I could still remember the smell of pine needles and the sound of the water lapping against the dock. When I arrived, the place was exactly as I remembered it, simple but peaceful. The wooden porch creaked under my feet, the old rocking chair still faced the lake, and the air smelled fresh and earthy. I could finally breathe. I unpacked my bags, set up my laptop on the old oak table, and decided to spend a few days relaxing before my old college friend arrived. She worked for the state attorney's office now, and we planned to talk about a new land use project she was advising on. It was supposed to be a quiet, productive, and refreshing week. The first day was perfect. I fished, grilled some dinner, and watched the sunset turn the lake orange. But as the last light faded, I noticed something strange. A silver SUV slowed down on the dirt road by the cabin. It didn't stop completely. It just hovered there for a few seconds. Through the tinted window, I caught a glimpse of a woman with short blonde hair and huge sunglasses. She stared directly at me, scribbled something in a notebook, and then drove off without a word. I tried to brush it off. Maybe she was lost, or maybe she was a curious local checking out who moved into the area. But the next morning, it happened again. The same SUV, the same woman. This time, she rolled down her window, glared at me, and then sped away. I started feeling uneasy. The cabin wasn't part of any neighborhood association, but I remembered my uncle once mentioning a nearby HOA that was a little too involved in everyone's business. That evening, as I grilled some food outside, I heard the sound of heels clicking on the gravel driveway. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her again, the woman from the SUV marching straight toward me like she owned the place. She had that stern, unblinking stare that screamed trouble. "Excuse me," she barked, her voice sharp. "This property is not approved for overnight occupancy. You can't stay here without HOA clearance." I stared at her, completely confused. "I'm sorry, what?" "This cabin isn't part of your HOA." She crossed her arms, lips pursed. "It's within the Lakeview community limits. That means it's under our jurisdiction." I tried to stay calm. "Ma'am, this property has been in my family for decades. It's private land. There's no HOA here," but she wasn't listening. She pulled out her phone, started snapping pictures of the cabin, and muttered something about filing an incident report. Her tone was so entitled, it almost felt unreal, like she genuinely believed she had power over this place. "I'll be back with official paperwork," she warned, turning on her heel and stomping back to her SUV. I watched her drive off, dust kicking up behind her tires, wondering what her problem was. I didn't know it yet, but that woman Karen wasn't just nosy. She was dangerous, and she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. The next morning started off calm. The sunlight poured through the window, sparkling off the surface of the lake like tiny diamonds. I made some coffee, stepped out onto the porch, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely relaxed. That moment didn't last long. As I reached for my mug, I noticed something bright fluttering on the doorframe, a neon orange paper taped right to my cabin door. It looked official at first glance, with bold red letters across the top, "Violation Notice." My stomach dropped as I read it. According to the notice, I was in violation of HOA Code 3B, unauthorized occupancy on association land. It demanded that I register my stay within 24 hours, pay a $300 temporary occupancy fee, and remove an unapproved dock structure. The letter even had a signature: Karen L. Peterson, HOA President. I couldn't help but laugh at how absurd it was. This woman had actually made a fake citation and taped it to my door like she was the sheriff of the woods. The problem was she wasn't even legally connected to this property. My uncle had shown me the original land deed years ago, The HOA border ended nearly half a mile away from our cabin. Still, something about it rubbed me the wrong way. I wasn't the type to start drama, but this was starting to feel like harassment. So later that afternoon, when I saw Karen's silver SUV parked down the road, I decided to go talk to her face to face and clear things up. She was standing near her car, holding a clipboard like a weapon, scanning the area as if she was conducting an inspection. When she saw me approaching, her expression tightened. "Oh, it's you again," she said, not bothering to hide her irritation. "I hope you've read the notice. You're in violation of HOA rules." I stayed calm. "There's been a misunderstanding. This property isn't part of your HOA. I have the county maps and the deed to prove it." Karen tilted her head with a smug smile. "You can show me whatever papers you want, but I know this area. Everything around this lake falls under Lakeview HOA. I'm the president, I know my territory." "Then you should know your own boundaries," I replied. "This cabin isn't within them. You're trespassing right now." Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? I'm the one enforcing the law here," I sighed. "You're not law enforcement, ma'am. You're just someone who runs an HOA. You have no legal authority here." That hit a nerve. Her cheeks flushed red. She stepped closer, pointing the end of her pen right at my chest. "You better watch your attitude, young man. The board doesn't take kindly to people like you. People who think they can just show up and ignore the rules." I was stunned by how serious she sounded. Her voice was shaking with anger, like this was personal. I noticed her eyes dart toward my license plate and the small stack of mail I was holding. Without asking, she took out her phone and snapped a few pictures of me, my car, even my cabin windows. "Are you taking photos of my home?" I asked, raising my voice now. "I'm documenting evidence," she said, as if that explained everything. "You'll be getting a fine soon, maybe even legal action. I'll take this straight to the board." "That's enough," I said, stepping between her and the cabin. "You're harassing me. Leave before I call the sheriff." For a moment she looked taken aback. Then, with a smirk that sent a chill down my spine, she muttered, "You'll regret that," and stormed back to her SUV. The tires spat dirt as she sped away, but I could see her glaring at me in the rearview mirror the entire time. That evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that she'd be back. I double-checked the locks, drew the curtains, and sat quietly by the fireplace. The crackling wood was the only sound in the room, but something about the stillness made me uneasy. I tried to focus on tomorrow's meeting. My friend from the state attorney's office would be arriving soon, and I didn't want any distractions. Still, I couldn't ignore the feeling that this Karen woman was planning something. I was right, because what happened next would turn a simple property dispute into a full-blown criminal case, and she'd have no idea just who she was about to mess with. The following morning, the lake was still and quiet, covered in a soft mist that hovered above the water. It should have been peaceful, but something in the air felt wrong. My dog Jasper wouldn't stop growling near the front door, and when I stepped outside, I noticed faint tire tracks pressed into the damp dirt driveway, fresh ones. I hadn't had any visitors since yesterday, and my car was parked exactly where I left it. A cold feeling settled in my chest. I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe it was a delivery truck that took a wrong turn. But when I came back from town an hour later with groceries, my stomach dropped. The front door of the cabin was slightly open. Not wide, but just enough to make the wooden floor creak when the wind blew. I froze. Every instinct told me not to go inside, but I had to know. I pushed the door open slowly, the hinges whining like a warning. The cabin smelled strange, like cheap perfume mixed with cleaning spray. My heart pounded as I stepped inside. The place was a mess. My backpack was unzipped and dumped on the couch. My papers were scattered across the floor, and the drawers near the kitchen counter had been pulled open. The coffee mug I left on the table was shattered. It wasn't a raccoon or a random animal. Someone had clearly been here, and then I heard it. A faint rustling from the back room. I followed the sound, my hand gripping the phone in my pocket, ready to record or call for help. When I turned the corner, I stopped dead in my tracks, standing right in my living room, holding my laptop like it was a piece of stolen evidence, was Karen. She looked up, startled, but quickly tried to act composed. "Oh, there you are," she said sharply, as if I was the intruder. "You shouldn't have left the door unlocked. I had to come in and inspect the property." "Inspect the property?" I repeated, stunned. "This is my family's private cabin. What are you doing in here?" She adjusted her sunglasses and lifted her chin. I'm documenting violations. You've refused to comply with HOA regulations, so I'm collecting proof for the board. You broke into my home, I snapped. That's illegal. You're trespassing. Karen's expression hardened. Don't you dare threaten me. I have every right to be here. You're the one violating the law. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She genuinely thought she was in charge, that her clipboard and self-assigned title made her untouchable. My voice was shaking, but I forced myself to stay calm. I'm recording this, I said, taking out my phone and hitting record. Say that again. You entered my home without permission? Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly composed herself. Go ahead. Record all you want. You'll be the one in trouble once the board sees what I've found. She started snapping photos again, of the walls, my personal papers, even the framed picture of my uncle that sat on the mantel. That was the last straw. Put my laptop down, I demanded. This is evidence, she barked back. You're tampering with HOA property. This isn't HOA property, I shouted. You're insane. You need to leave right now before I call the sheriff. Before she could respond, the sound of crunching tires came from outside. A black SUV pulled into the driveway. Karen froze, her eyes darting toward the window. Who's that? She demanded, her voice suddenly uncertain. I stepped closer, lowering my phone slightly. That, I said slowly, is the person you'll want to explain yourself to. The door opened and my guest stepped inside. A woman in a gray blazer with sharp eyes and an air of quiet authority. Karen's posture stiffened instantly, and for the first time she didn't seem so confident. The woman smiled at me. Hope I'm not too early, she said. Traffic was better than expected. You're right on time, I replied. Then I turned to Karen. Karen, meet Lisa McConnell, the state attorney general. Karen's face drained of color. She blinked rapidly, her mouth opening but no words coming out. The clipboard in her hand trembled slightly. Oh, wait, she stammered. The attorney general? Lisa nodded, giving her a cool, professional smile. That's right. And who might you be? Karen swallowed hard. I'm the HOA president. I was just, checking on some violations. Lisa glanced around the room, her eyes falling on my broken mug, the scattered papers, the open drawers. Her expression darkened. Violations? Looks more like you broke into private property. Karen tried to recover. No, I have authority here. This land is part of the HOA. Lisa raised an eyebrow. Is it? Because I checked the county land registry before coming here. This property isn't within any HOA boundary. You're trespassing. Karen opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. Her face went red, then pale. Lisa looked at me. You got all this on video? Every second, I said, showing her the recording on my phone. Lisa gave a small nod, then turned back to Karen with the kind of calm that could slice through steel. Good. Then we'll let the sheriff handle the rest. Karen took a step back, shaking her head. Wait, hold on, this is a misunderstanding. I was just trying to... But Lisa cut her off. Save it for the report. You've done enough already. Karen's fake confidence crumbled completely. She dropped her clipboard and hurried toward the door, mumbling something about calling her lawyer. But it was too late. The law was already on its way, and this time, she wasn't the one in charge. Lisa McConnell stepped fully inside the cabin, setting her leather briefcase on the table with quiet authority. She scanned the room, her sharp eyes taking in the chaos, the scattered papers, the broken mug. Karen's trembling hands clutching her phone like it was a shield. The silence was so thick you could hear the clock ticking above the fireplace. Karen looked frozen in place, caught between indignation and panic. She tried to force a smile. Look, there's obviously been a misunderstanding here. I was just doing my duty as the HOA president. This man is staying in a property that's under our association, and I... Lisa raised a hand, cutting her off with a calm but firm tone. Before you finish that sentence, you should know that I already reviewed this property's status with the county assessor's office this morning. This cabin is on privately owned land, not subject to any HOA authority, so unless you can produce a legal warrant, you've just admitted to breaking and entering. Karen's eyes widened. That's not what I didn't break in. The door was open. I crossed my arms. It was locked when I left. Lisa turned to me. Do you have proof she entered without permission? I nodded. My camera caught her car pulling up about 30 minutes after I left. And I have her on video holding my laptop, calling it evidence. Karen's face drained of color. Wait, what? You recorded me? Lisa's expression didn't change. Good, that'll make this easy. She turned back to Karen, her tone now razor sharp. You do realize impersonating a public official and unlawfully entering someone's home are both criminal offenses? Karen started stammering, her confident facade collapsing like a bad stage prop. I wasn't impersonating anyone. I just thought, well, I believed that this was HOA land. It's an honest mistake. Lisa stepped closer, her voice calm but icy. A mistake is when you send the wrong email. This was premeditated. You wrote a fake violation notice, demanded payment, and harassed a homeowner. You can't accidentally fabricate authority. Karen took a shaky step backward, her words tumbling out faster. You can't arrest me. I'm just trying to keep order in the community. People around here break the rules all the time. Parking boats, leaving trash, building docks without permission. Someone has to enforce the standards. Lisa folded her arms. You're not law enforcement, Mrs. Peterson. You don't get to decide who's guilty or not. You're a volunteer board member with no jurisdiction here. For a moment, the only sound in the cabin was the faint hum of the refrigerator. Karen looked like she might faint, but her pride wouldn't let her back down completely. You can't just walk in here and accuse me of crimes. Who do you think you are? She demanded, her voice trembling. Lisa smiled faintly and reached into her jacket pocket. She pulled out her identification wallet and flipped it open, revealing the official seal of the State Attorney General's office. The golden emblem gleamed in the sunlight spilling through the window. I think I'm exactly who I need to be, she said softly. Karen's breath hitched. You're really the Attorney General? Lisa nodded once. Yes, and you've walked straight into a criminal case without even realizing it. Karen looked like she'd been punched. I didn't mean this wasn't supposed to. Lisa turned to me. Call the sheriff's office, she said. Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried the kind of weight that made you move instantly. Karen snapped out of her shock and lunged toward the door. Wait, please. Let's just forget about this. I'll delete the photos, I'll apologize. Lisa didn't flinch. You'll have plenty of time to apologize in your statement. Karen stopped in her tracks, her breathing heavy. You don't understand. I was just trying to keep the neighborhood nice. People don't respect authority anymore. If we let everyone do what they want, Lisa cut her off again, her patience gone. Authority means nothing without accountability. You broke into someone's home, took their property, and tried to extort money. That's not community service, that's criminal. I stood by the door, phone in hand, my heart still pounding. As I dialed the sheriff's number, Karen stood there trembling, her confidence gone. Her words reduced to desperate muttering. Within minutes, the familiar sound of tires crunching over gravel echoed outside. 2 county deputies stepped out of a patrol car and made their way toward the cabin. Karen's face went pale when she saw them. She turned to Lisa one last time. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking. Can't we just settle this privately? Lisa shook her head. The law doesn't work privately. The deputies stepped inside, their eyes scanning the scene before one of them asked, Ma'am, are you Mrs. Peterson? Karen hesitated, then nodded weakly. Yes. But I can explain, Lisa spoke up. This woman unlawfully entered private property, impersonated an HOA authority figure, and attempted to extort the owner. We have it all on video. One of the deputies nodded and motioned for Karen to turn around. The sound of handcuffs clicking echoed through the quiet cabin. Karen's eyes filled with tears as she looked at me. You're making a huge mistake, she said softly. No, I said, meeting her gaze. You did. As the deputies led her outside, the tension that had hung in the cabin for days finally lifted. Lisa turned to me and exhaled slowly. Some people think power gives them permission, she said. But all it really does is reveal who they are. I nodded, looking out the window as the patrol car drove away, the lake's reflection shimmering calmly again. For the first time since I'd arrived, the cabin felt peaceful, truly peaceful, but the story wasn't over yet. Justice was coming, and the lake that had once been a place of silence was about to echo with the sound of truth. The deputies led Karen out of the cabin, her face pale and eyes wide, the weight of the moment finally sinking in. Her protests grew quieter with every step. You can't do this to me. I'm the HOA president. I was just doing my job, she shouted, but her voice cracked halfway through. The sheriff didn't respond. He'd heard it all before. I stood at the porch, the cold breeze from the lake brushing past as I watched them guide her into the patrol car. The flashing blue and red lights reflected on the water's surface, dancing across the waves like a warning. Lisa stood beside me, arms crossed, her expression unreadable but firm. She'd handled dozens of cases like this, but I could tell even she found this one strange. As the patrol car drove off down the gravel path, Lisa finally spoke. "You know, this isn't her first time pulling something like this." I turned to her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "She's been on our radar for a while," Lisa said. "There have been multiple complaints about her harassing property owners near the HOA boundaries, people who technically weren't even under her jurisdiction. She'd fine them, issue fake citations, even threaten legal action to make them comply." She shook her head. "She got away with it because most people were too intimidated to fight back." I let that sink in. Karen had turned her obsession with control into a pattern of manipulation, and she probably thought she was unstoppable until she stepped into the wrong cabin. Later that evening, after the deputies had finished taking statements and collecting the footage, the sun began to dip behind the trees. The lake turned from silver to gold, and the air filled with the gentle sound of crickets. The chaos of the day slowly faded, replaced by the soft rhythm of nature. Lisa joined me on the porch, carrying 2 mugs of coffee she'd found in the cupboard. "You handled yourself well," she said, sitting down beside me. "Most people would have lost their temper long before now." I smiled faintly. I wanted to, believe me. But something about her, it wasn't just anger. It was desperation, like she needed to be in control of something, no matter how small. Lisa nodded. "That's how it usually starts. People like her wrap their identity around authority. The moment someone challenges it, they lash out." She took a sip of coffee. "But there's always a line," and she crossed it. We sat in silence for a while, watching the colors of the sunset fade over the lake. The air was still calm again. For the first time since I'd arrived, I actually felt like I could rest. A few days later, I got a call from the sheriff. Karen had been formally charged with trespassing, impersonation, and attempted extortion. The HOA board voted to remove her immediately, and it turned out several residents had come forward with their own stories after hearing what happened. The so-called president had finally met her downfall. Word spread fast around the community. Some neighbors came by to thank me for standing up to her, saying they'd been scared to speak out. Others just wanted to confirm it was true, that the infamous Karen had been caught red-handed. Lisa returned to the Capitol shortly after, but before she left, she smiled and said, "You did more than protect your property. You reminded people that no one is above the law, no matter how loud they shout." A week later, I was alone again, sitting on the same porch where everything had started. The lake was calm, perfectly still, reflecting the sky like a sheet of glass. The chaos was gone, replaced by peace, the kind of quiet I had come here for in the first place. I looked at the small stack of mail on the porch table. One envelope stood out, a letter from the Lakeview HOA. My first thought was that it might be another ridiculous complaint, but when I opened it, it was a handwritten note from the new acting president. It read, "Dear Mr. Walker, we want to sincerely apologize for what happened. Karen Peterson's actions do not reflect our community's values. We're grateful that the truth came out, and that you helped put a stop to her abuse of authority. We wish you peace and welcome you any time to enjoy the lake in harmony." I smiled to myself, folded the letter, and placed it back on the table. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same organization that once tried to chase me away was now thanking me for standing my ground. That evening, I lit a small fire by the shore. The flames flickered against the water, warm and steady. As the night grew darker, I thought about how fast things had spiraled, how one woman's obsession with control had collided with the law itself. But what stuck with me most wasn't her downfall. It was the reminder that sometimes, doing nothing is what gives bullies their power. The moment you stand up, the illusion breaks. As the fire burned low and the stars filled the sky, I took one last look at the quiet lake. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about work, stress, or people like Karen. I was just present, finally at peace in a place that felt like home again. And though I knew this story would eventually fade into local rumor, one thing was certain. If anyone ever tried to pull another stunt like that around here, they'd think twice before stepping foot on my porch, because the next person who tried to play HOA queen on private, land might just find themselves face to face with the state attorney general again, and that's how one woman's obsession with control backfired in the most unbelievable way. What started as a simple cabin getaway turned into a courtroom reality check, and a powerful reminder that no one, not even an HOA president, is above the law. If you enjoyed this story and love seeing real justice served, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next unbelievable HOA meltdown. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if Karen broke into your cabin? Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes standing your ground is all it takes to expose the truth.